Them to you.
Thank you so much, Meena, for having me.
Yeah. Well, actually, there's no better way to wrap up the Fashion and Apparel Innovation Summit than to sit here and talk to you this evening. An absolute fashion icon, known globally, actually. It's not just an Indian name. Of course, a Bollywood superstar, mother, and businesswoman. So that's a lot of hats you're donning. Let's jump right into it because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of stuff the audience wants to know about you and from you. To kickstart, Sonam, can you talk to us a little bit about how your journey and your kind of romance with fashion really began? How did it all start, and what were the biggest sources of inspiration to you along your way?
Being born in the film industry, you're so used to seeing beautiful people in and out of your house. And I feel films have such a big hand in dictating trends, especially in a country like India. So I feel that was one of the reasons that I got so much into film and fashion. Second was my mom was a model, and then she became a very successful fashion designer, and now she's a jewelry designer. And I grew up around Abu Sandeep, Tarun Tahiliani, Anamika, and all these incredible fashion designers, and Anuradha Vakil, and they taught me a lot about textiles, international fashion, embroidery, cuts. And my mom, especially my mother, she was collecting old zari pieces and jamewars and purana zari ke sari. So I knew the difference between chandeli and silk sari, and so all those things were just ingrained in me since I was a young girl. And she also exposed me to a lot of international designers, and I don't only mean French and Italian designers. She exposed me to Japanese designers, and other Asian designers as well. So that world exposure, because her passion was also in fashion, and being a designer, she was also a retailer. So understanding that came from my mother.
Well, with such a diverse background and such a rich background, no wonder, of course, you are the fashion icon
You
that you
told
are
me you
today.
grew up with Pia Shivdasani, so
That's
her
right.
mom, her mother and my mother were partners, and so you do know that they were fashion designers, and now they do exports. So Anu auntie and Anu Shivdasani and my mother are cousins, and they started their brand Amaya together. Yeah.
Fantastic. This is a small world. So, Sonam, given that you've been exposed to fashion from literally maybe childhood birth, perhaps, how have you seen the fashion scene in India evolve over the years? And what is the role that celebrity plays in this?
I feel what is amazing that's happening now in India is that there's a lot of pride in what is made in India. And I've been seeing it. I remember initially there was a lot of Western obsession in terms of whatever is made abroad, but then we realized that most things actually are embroidered and made in India that are exported abroad and maybe assembled there. And so that made in India, passion and that pride, I think, is what we've evolved into. At least I have. And as an actor who has a platform, whenever I get the opportunity to have a big stage where I can showcase Indian fashion, I try to do that because I realize the kind of impact that I have in terms of whatever I wear. So I remember the very first can I went to. I wanted to wear my very dear friend Masaba's sari, and I wore that sari, and it was on the cover of Women's Wedding, and that international exposure was great. So whenever I get a chance, I try to wear an Indian garment in whichever possible way I can, because as actors we do have a very important, and we make a lot of impact on people's the way they think and the way they dress.
And what goes hand in hand with that is your personal touch in storytelling, right? Like, how do you express yourself through your fashion? How do you tell your story in the way you dress?
Well, I'm a Gemini, so
Me
I
too.
you are, sir. So every time we wake up in the morning, we feel we've got different moods clothes, and we're different people every day. And I think the one way to express ourselves is through what we wear. I feel like anybody that you see with whatever they wear, we can tell who they are as people, right? It's one form of expression. When we go through history as well, we can see what's happening culturally, historically, politically, what's happening at that point in time. Whether we look at the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, we know through fashion, through what people wore, we can tell what the mindset of society and people were at that time. So fashion has a huge part to play in people's mindsets, and we can actually define eras through what people have worn.
So, how do you tap into this very fact of knowing that fashion is an expression of what's happening culturally in the present moment? How do you tap into that as an entrepreneur? Because of course, you have your own fashion label. You have strategy behind Bhane, veg, non-veg, recent, of course. So, how do you pool in all your knowledge and your resources into being an entrepreneur in the fashion space?
So, honestly, I can't take credit for Veg Non-Veg and Bhani, even though I'm very heavily involved with my husband's company. He started Bhani because his family, our family basically, we have an export house. And he said that the best quality things were actually going out of India. Like I said, we make a lot in India for a lot of big brands abroad, and he had a lot of he saw in his office there were a lot of students coming in, and they didn't have access to the same clothes that they were designing. And he said that, I want a brand that's made in India, designed by Indians, that has the same level of quality, that can be accessed at reasonable, at a reasonable price point. And he started Bhani. Bhani means the rising sun. It means a new day. And he said that this is a new day for fashion, new day for Indians. And that's why he started Bhani. And the whole point of Bhani is for these clothes are specifically made to be comfortable, fashionable, for young creatives and for young people who go to work. And they are fashionable, but at the same time, they're simple. And it's a beautiful brand, and because of that, it does very well. Now, Veg Non-Veg was started by my husband and his partner Abhini, and they both it's called Veg Non-Veg because one of them is vegetarian, one of them is not. And it's a very typical Indian thing. You see there's a red spot and a green spot. You only see in Indian food. You see, okay, अगर लाल है तो उसमें कुछ non-vegetarian है, अगर green है तो उसमें ये vegetarian है. And that's what the name is. It also defines something